Jiho pushed through the sliding doors of Kix's repairs with a grimace on his face. The small shop sat on the outer ring of Proxima Centauri Station, far from the polished central hub where most humans lived and worked. Here, the corridors were narrower, the lighting dimmer, and the air carried hints of machine oil and alien spices. Behind him, Jiho's malfunctioning droid, Setham, rolled forward on wobbly treads. The soil analysis module had been his faithful companion for 3 years of terraforming work, but now its main sensor array hung at an odd angle, and its movements were jerky and unpredictable. "Come on," Jiho urged the machine when it stopped abruptly in the doorway. He tugged at its frame, wincing as pain shot through his lower back. Just a few more steps. The repair shop was cluttered but organized. Tools of varying shapes, some recognizable to human eyes, others clearly designed for appendages with different configurations, hung on magnetic strips along the walls. Half-finished projects sat on workbenches under bright spotlighting. The air smelled of hot metal and electric current. Jiho hadn't slept properly in days. His normally neat black hair stuck out in all directions, and his terraforming corps uniform, once snug against his athletic frame, now hung loose around his waist. Dark circles beneath his eyes made his face look hollow. "Hello," he called out. "I need a repair." His voice came out as a croak. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Is anyone here?" A rustling sound came from behind a tall shelf stacked with parts. A moment later, a creature emerged that made Jiho take an involuntary step back. The Iridian stood about a head taller than Jiho. Her exoskeleton was primarily a dusty copper color, with iridescent blue patterns across the thorax. 6 limbs extended from her body, 2 strong legs, 2 primary arms, and 2 smaller, more dexterous appendages that sprouted just below what humans would call shoulders. Her head was smooth and oval, dominated by compound eyes that shifted from green to purple depending on the angle of light. 2 long antennae extended from the top of her head, constantly moving in small, precise patterns. "Welcome to Kix's repairs," the Iridian said, her voice surprisingly melodious through the universal translator chip embedded in Jiho's ear. "I am Kixa." Jiho had worked with many alien species during his 5 years as a terraforming engineer, but he had limited interaction with Iridians. They were known for their mechanical genius and their somewhat unsettling ability to perceive biological systems as just another type of machinery. "My droid needs fixing," Jiho said, gesturing toward Sesam. "It's a soil analysis module. Standard TerraCorp's issue, but with some custom modifications." Kix's antennae twitched toward the droid, then swiveled to point at Jiho. "I see." She moved across the workshop floor with surprising grace for a being with an exoskeleton. 2 of her limbs carried scanning devices that Jiho didn't recognize. "This unit has a designation?" she asked, already beginning to examine Setham. "Yes, it's SAM," Jiho replied. "It's been malfunctioning for 3 days now. The sensor array is misaligned, and there's something wrong with its mobility functions." Kixa ran one scanner over the droid, then, to Jiho's surprise, pointed the other directly at him. A soft blue light washed over his body. "Hey." Jiho raised his hand to block the scan. "I didn't ask for that. Comprehensive analysis is standard procedure," Kixa said, her compound eyes shifting to a deeper purple. "All connected systems must be evaluated." "I'm not connected to," Jiho began, but a sudden wave of dizziness cut him off. He reached out to steady himself against a workbench. Kixa made a clicking sound that the translator didn't convert. "How long since you last entered rest cycle?" Jiho frowned. "That's not relevant to fixing my droid." "When did you last consume adequate nutrients?" Kixa continued, ignoring his objection. "Look," Jiho said, his patience wearing thin. His head pounded with the beginnings of another stress headache. "I've got extremely tight deadlines on a terraforming project. I need SAM back in working order as soon as possible. That's all." Kixia set down her scanning devices and approached Jaiho. Her movements were deliberate, almost cautious, as if approaching an unstable power source. "Your SAM unit has minor damage," she said. "Primary issues are misaligned optical sensors and worn treads causing mobility errors. Repair time, approximately 2 hours." Jaiho let out a relieved breath. "Good. That's good. I can wait here if that's okay." He glanced around for somewhere to sit. "However," Kixia continued, her antennae pointing directly at him, "my scans indicate that you, the operator, are functioning at dangerous efficiency levels." Jaiho blinked. "Excuse me? Your biological systems show signs of severe fatigue. Nutrient levels are below acceptable parameters. Stress hormones are elevated beyond safe thresholds." Kixia's voice remained matter-of-fact. "Your operational capacity is severely compromised." A flash of irritation shot through Jaiho. "I didn't come here for a health check. I just need my droid fixed so I can get back to work." "Just fix SAM, please," Jaiho muttered, rubbing his temples. "I've got terraforming deadlines." Kixia's compound eyes narrowed, the purple darkening to an almost indigo shade. Her antennae stilled, a sign, though Jaiho didn't know it, of iridian concern. "Interesting," she said, her head tilting slightly. "You recognize the importance of maintenance for your mechanical assistant, but not for yourself." Jaiho opened his mouth to object, but another wave of dizziness hit him. This time, he had to grip the workbench tightly to stay upright. The room seemed to tilt and spin around him. "When did you last sleep?" Kixia asked again. "I don't know," Jaiho admitted reluctantly. "Maybe 40 hours ago. I took a stim tab yesterday." "And food?" Jaiho tried to remember. "I had a nutrition bar this morning, I think." Kixia moved to a console on the wall and tapped a series of commands. A holographic display appeared, showing what Jaiho recognized as human biological readings alongside mechanical diagnostics for SAM. "Your machine requires minor repairs," Kixia stated, pointing to the droid's schematics. Then her smaller limb indicated the human readings. "You, however, appear to be functioning at dangerous efficiency levels." "I'm fine," Jaiho insisted, though the room wouldn't stop spinning. "The data suggests otherwise," Kixia replied. "In Iridian culture, it is considered deeply unethical to repair one component of a system while ignoring catastrophic failure in another." Jaiho felt his knees buckle. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Kixia moving with surprising speed to catch his falling body with 4 of her 6 limbs. "Humans." Kixia clicked to herself as she carefully lowered the unconscious terraformer onto a cushioned repair bench. Such remarkable machines, and such terrible maintenance protocols. She turned to the patiently waiting droid. "Do not worry. SAM, I will repair both of you." Jaiho woke up on a padded bench with a start. The unfamiliar ceiling above him was covered in twisting metal pipes and blinking lights. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then he heard the distinct sound of metal tools against metal parts, and it all came back to him. He was in an alien repair shop on the edge of Proxima Centauri Station, and he had passed out. "How long was I unconscious?" he asked, sitting up too quickly. A wave of dizziness forced him back down. 17 minutes and 43 seconds, came Kixia's melodious voice from across the workshop. "A brief emergency shutdown. Your systems are attempting to force necessary maintenance." Jaiho turned his head to see the Iridian mechanic working on SAM. 4 of her 6 limbs moved with precise coordination, one holding a small welding tool, another adjusting SAM's sensor array, while the remaining 2 managed various diagnostic tools. Her compound eyes glowed a soft blue in concentration. "I don't normally pass out," Jaiho said, embarrassment heating his face. "I'm sorry about that." "Apology unnecessary," Kixia replied without looking up from her work. It was a predictable system response. Jaiho slowly swung his legs off the bench and sat up, more carefully this time. A small device on the wall near him beeped as he moved. "What's that?" he asked. "Biological monitor," Kixit explained, "currently tracking your vital functions." Jaiho frowned. "I didn't agree to that." "Emergency protocols. You were an unattended system in failure mode." Kixit set down her welding tool and picked up something that looked like a curved silver wand. "I have questions regarding your maintenance schedule. I don't have time for 20-hour shifts for 3 weeks." Kix's exoskeleton clicked as she worked on SETAM. "No wonder your organic systems are failing." Jaiho stared at her. "How did you know that?" "Your droid's internal log shows continuous operation with only brief charging periods for 22 days. As your assistant, it operates when you operate." She adjusted something inside SETAM's open panel. "Simple deduction." Jaiho ran a hand through his tangled hair. "The terraforming project on New Jeju is behind schedule. If we don't get atmospheric processors online within the next month, we'll miss the planting window. That means another full year before colonization can begin. And you are the only human capable of this work." Kixa asked, her antennae twitching. "No, but..." Jaiho hesitated. "I'm the project lead. There aren't many humans in terraforming leadership positions. I can't show weakness." "Fascinating logic error," Kixa said. She set down her tools and moved toward a small refrigeration unit in the corner of the workshop, equating biological necessity with weakness. Jaiho watched as she removed a container of pale blue liquid. "I'm fine," he insisted, swaying slightly as he stood up. "Just a human thing. We push through." "Indeed. Your species is known for overriding biological warning systems," Kixa agreed. She poured the blue liquid into what looked like a metal cup and brought it to Jaiho. "Drink this." Jaiho eyed the cup suspiciously. "What is it?" "Nutrient solution. Compatible with human biology. Contains proteins, electrolytes, glucose, and trace minerals." "I'm not hungry." "Hunger is a signal your system has learned to ignore," Kixa said. "The need remains." Jaiho reluctantly took the cup. The liquid smelled faintly of coconut and something unfamiliar but not unpleasant. He took a small sip. It tasted better than he expected, slightly sweet with a hint of saltiness. As he drank, Kixa returned to SETAM and pressed a sequence of buttons on the droid's control panel. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. On one side were SETAM's diagnostics, a schematic of the droid with several areas highlighted in yellow and one in red. On the other side was what looked like a human body outline with significantly more areas marked in red and orange. "What is this?" Jaiho asked, though he already knew the answer. Kixa projected Jaiho's biological readings beside SETAM's diagnostic report. "Comparative system analysis," she explained. "Your droid has a misaligned sensor array, worn treads, and minor power regulation issues." She moved one limb to indicate the human outline. "You have severe sleep deprivation, nutritional deficiencies, muscle tension that is restricting blood flow, and dangerously elevated stress hormones." Jaiho stared at the display, seeing his body through the alien's mechanical perspective. It was strange and unsettling to be analyzed like a machine, but he couldn't deny the evidence before him. "In my culture, to repair one component while ignoring system failure is deeply unethical," Kixa continued. "It violates the principle of system harmony." "I'm not a machine," Jaiho protested weakly. "No," Kixa agreed. "You are more complex, more valuable, more difficult to replace." Her compound eyes shifted to a gentle amber color. "And yet you treat yourself with less care than this simple soil analysis unit." Jaiho felt a strange emotion rise within him, something between defensiveness and a dawning realization. The alien wasn't wrong. If SETAM had been operating under the conditions Jaiho had imposed on himself, he would have brought the droid in for repairs weeks ago. "I can complete repairs on your droid in approximately 2 hours," Kixa said. "However, I propose a deal. I fix your droid quickly if you submit to maintenance yourself." "Maintenance?" Jai-ho repeated. What exactly does that mean? Nothing invasive, Kiksa assured him. Nutrition, hydration, rest, and basic physical adjustments to improve circulation and reduce muscle tension. All compatible with human biology. Jai-ho looked at Sam, its sensor array hanging at an awkward angle. He needed the droid operational as soon as possible, but he also knew he was running on fumes. Another day or two, and he might collapse completely. How long would this maintenance take? He asked cautiously. 4 hours minimum, Kiksa replied, during which I will also complete repairs on SAM. 4 hours. Jai-ho shook his head. I can't lose that much time. Consider this, Kiksa said, her voice remarkably patient. Your current efficiency is approximately 30% of optimal. After maintenance, you would likely operate at 80% or better. Applied over the next week, this represents a net gain of productivity, not a loss. Jai-ho blinked. The alien was speaking his language now. Efficiency, productivity, numbers. He looked again at the biological readings displayed before him. The red areas seemed to pulse in rhythm with his racing heart. How do you know so much about humans? He asked. Iridians are students of all systems, Kiksa explained. Mechanical, biological, social. We see patterns where others see differences. She made a gesture with her smaller limbs that might have been the equivalent of a shrug. Also, I have repaired many droids belonging to humans. I observe. I learn. Jai-ho drained the last of the blue liquid in his cup. Already he felt slightly more alert, the edge of his headache dulling. If I agree to this, he said slowly, no one else can know. Especially not anyone from TerraCorps. Client confidentiality is standard, Kiksa assured him. In my workshop, you are simply another system requiring maintenance. Jai-ho looked at his faithful droid, then back at his own biological readings. Finally, he nodded. Okay, he said. I agree to your deal. Excellent, Kiksa said, her antennae quivering in what Jai-ho guessed might be satisfaction. System harmony will be restored. As the alien turned back to work on Sam, Jai-ho couldn't help but wonder what exactly he had just agreed to. But for the first time in weeks, a small part of him felt something like relief. Jai-ho sat on a workbench with a shallow bowl of strange food in his hands. The meal Kiksa had prepared looked like purple rice, mixed with protein cubes that shifted color from blue to green depending on the angle. Small orange bits that resembled vegetables were scattered throughout. It smelled surprisingly good, like roasted nuts and mild spices. What is this exactly? Jai-ho asked, poking at it with the utensil Kiksa had provided. It looked like a cross between a spoon and a small shovel. Nutrient complex adapted for human consumption. Kiksa replied while working on Sesam with 3 of her limbs. A 4th limb occasionally checked readings on a monitor connected to the small sensor patch she placed on Jai-ho's wrist. Contains all essential amino acids, complex carbohydrates, minerals, and micronutrients your system requires. Jai-ho took a small, cautious bite. The texture was unusual, slightly chewy with crunchy bits, but the taste was pleasant, like salted rice with a hint of sweetness. It's not bad, he admitted, taking another bite. Flavor is irrelevant, Kiksa said, her antenna twitching. Function is primary. Humans don't really work that way, Jai-ho explained between bites. We like things to taste good, even when we know they're good for us. Inefficient programming, Kiksa commented, but there was no judgment in her tone. She was simply stating a fact as she saw it. The repair shop hummed with activity. Various machines ran diagnostics and repair cycles on other items. Jai-ho watched as Kiksa deftly recalibrated Sam's sensor array. Her movements were precise and economical, no motion wasted. How long have you been a mechanic? Jai-ho asked. I have repaired systems for 73 of your Earth years, Kiksa replied. Jai-ho nearly choked on his food. 73 years. How old are you? 112 Earth years. relatively young for an Iridian. She adjusted something inside Sam's main panel, and a series of lights flickered on in sequence. My species typically functions for 250 to 300 years before system failure. That's amazing, Jaiho said. He was 29 and already running his body into the ground. Longevity is a result of proper maintenance, Kixis stated matter-of-factly. Your monitor shows improved readings. The nutrition is having positive effects. Jaiho hadn't realized how hungry he was until he started eating. Now the bowl was nearly empty, and he did feel better, more alert, less shaky. The persistent headache that had been his companion for weeks had faded to a dull pressure rather than sharp pain. After you finish eating, I will perform physical adjustments to release muscle tension, Kixa informed him. Then you will enter rest mode for minimum 2 hours. Sleep? I can't sleep here, Jaiho protested. I need to. Your SAM unit will require 2 hours for final calibrations and testing, Kixa interrupted. This time will be used efficiently for your maintenance as well. Jaiho sighed. He had agreed to the deal, after all. Fine. As he finished the last of his meal, Kixa approached with what looked like a handheld scanner. She ran it over his shoulders and back, studying the results on a small screen. Major tension nodes detected, she announced. Please remove outer protective layer. Jaiho stared at her. My what? Outer fabric, Kixa clarified, making a tugging motion at her own exoskeleton. Oh, my jacket. Jaiho slipped off his terracotta utility jacket, revealing the thin black t-shirt underneath. Like this, through their connection, Jaiho realized the critical moment that had arrived. Honesty was essential. The neural link would reveal deception anyway. Yes, including you, he admitted. Until we know each other better, caution is natural. Don't Marexians prepare for potential threats? We prepare for harmonious integration, Nara corrected. Our first assumption is compatibility, not conflict. Jaiho considered this fundamental difference. Perhaps that's something we can learn from you. He felt their surprise at his admission. And something else. Respect. For Marexians, acknowledging another's superior approach was deeply honorable. And perhaps we have things to learn from humans as well, Nara conceded. Your adaptability is remarkable. In moments, you've adjusted to neural exchange when your species had no preparation for it. As the final oils were applied, Jaiho felt the neural connection reaching its peak. In this moment of shared consciousness, he understood the Marexians more clearly than any human ever had, and they understood him. Through this single point of contact, two vastly different species were finding common ground. The ritual is complete, Nara announced finally, stepping back. You have honored us with your openness, Lieutenant Commander Park. Jaiho stood, feeling strangely energized despite the intensity of the experience. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I believe I understand now what we need to do for a successful alliance. And what is that? Minji asked, her tone suggesting this was a test. Jaiho smiled. We need to create new methods of communication that honor both our ways. Humans aren't ready for full neural exchange, but we can begin with more comprehensive data sharing and modified rituals like this for key representatives. The three Marexians looked at each other, then back to him. Slowly, they each touched their fingertips to their foreheads, and then extended their hands toward him. A gesture he now understood represented approved consensus. You will join the council meeting tomorrow, Nara said. Together, we will find a new path forward. As Jaiho prepared to leave the chamber, he realized humanity had been approaching these negotiations completely wrong. They had been planning to discuss trade, technology exchange, and security. All important topics, but entirely missing the Marexian focus on compatible thought patterns and harmonious integration. Thanks to this unexpected ritual, he alone understood what was truly at stake, and what incredible opportunities awaited if they could bridge the gap between two fundamentally different ways of experiencing the universe. Taeho followed Nara toward the deeper part of the bathing pool where the next phase of the ritual would take place. The water, if it could be called water, had a silky quality that seemed to support his weight. As he moved, he noticed something odd on Minji's forearm as she prepared the next set of oils. A pattern of small marks spiraled around her wrist, different from the flowing symmetrical patterns he had observed on other Merexians. His military training kicked in. Different markings often indicated different allegiances or factions, something he'd observed in dozens of diplomatic missions across Earth. Was Minji from a different region, or perhaps a different political group? Taeho kept his face neutral as he lowered himself into the pool. The neural connection from the first oil still hummed in his mind, but he carefully contained his suspicions behind mental barriers. If Merexians could read his thoughts, he didn't want to broadcast his concerns. The submersion phase enhances neural receptivity, Yuna explained, adding aromatic compounds to the water around him. You may experience more vivid impressions. I look forward to it, Taeho replied with a diplomatic smile. He shifted position slightly, allowing him to keep Minji in his peripheral vision. Nara guided him to recline in the shallow pool. Relax your mind and let the impressions flow naturally. As Taeho closed his eyes, he felt the neural connection deepen. Images of Merexian culture flowed into his consciousness, their art, architecture, social structures. But now he noticed something new, small discordant notes, like static in the smooth flow of information. These disruptions seemed to coincide with moments when Minji touched the water near him. Carefully, he tried an experiment. He directed his thoughts toward curiosity about Merexian political structures. Immediately, he felt Nara and Yuna's minds respond with images of their consensus-based governance. But from Minji, he sensed hesitation, and then what felt like a carefully constructed response, a perfect, idealized version of the same information. Too perfect to be natural. She was hiding something. The markings on your arm are beautiful, Taeho said casually to Minji as she applied a new oil to his shoulders. They're different from what I've observed on other Merexians. Her large eyes flickered briefly to Nara before she answered. These are family markings. Each lineage has unique patterns. How fascinating, Taeho responded. Are family groups involved in government decision-making? All voices are considered in the harmonious consensus, she replied smoothly, too smoothly. The neural connection flickered with something she was suppressing. Nara tilted her head slightly. Minji's family has traditionally advocated for cautious expansion. They have concerns about rapid integration with new species. That confirmed it. Minji represented a faction that opposed alliance with humans. She was here to assess him, and by extension, all humans, for weaknesses. As if on cue, Minji produced a small crystal instrument. This resonance tool helps align neural pathways, she explained. May I use it to scan your response patterns? Of course, Taeho agreed, while his military instincts went on high alert. Through the neural connection, he detected Nara's slight surprise. This wasn't a standard part of the ritual. As Minji moved the crystal device over his chest, Taeho felt subtle probing sensations in his mind. She wasn't just measuring neural responses. She was actively searching for specific information about human physiology, stress responses, and defensive capabilities. Two could play at this game. Taeho deliberately relaxed his body, allowing the scanner to detect only calm, measured responses. At the same time, he directed his thoughts toward memories of Earth's natural beauty. Oceans, mountains, forests. Pleasant, non-threatening images. Your homeworld appears magnificent, Minji commented, adjusting her scanner. Are all humans so connected to natural environments? Many are, Taeho replied. Then, carefully he added, though some prefer our megacities with their protective shields and defense grids. He hadn't mentioned defense systems in a threatening way, just as a casual fact. But through the neural link, he sensed Minji's immediate interest. The scanner lingered over his heart. Your cardiac system increases activity when you mention defenses, she noted. Does discussing protection trigger stress responses in humans? Not stress. Tahoe corrected with a smile. Pride. Security allows cultures to flourish peacefully. Through their connection, he directed the thought specifically to Nera and Yuna. Asterisk security prevents exploitation by those with harmful intentions. Asterisk. He felt their minds register understanding, while Minji's scanner moved more rapidly. The water temperature will increase now, Nera announced. It enhances information transfer. As the pool warmed, Tahoe felt the neural connection become more intense. Minji's scanning became more aggressive, pushing deeper into his thoughts about Earth's defenses and human physical vulnerabilities. Rather than resist, Tahoe decided on a different approach. He would give her information, but shape it carefully. I notice your scanner focuses on biological responses, he said conversationally. You should know that humans have remarkable adaptive capabilities. Our immune systems can reconfigure to counter unknown pathogens within days. This was a slight exaggeration, but delivered with complete confidence. Through the neural link, he sensed Minji's doubt and concern. Is that unique among species you've encountered? He asked innocently. It is unusual, Minji admitted, her large eyes narrowing slightly. Tahoe nodded as if this was commonplace knowledge. Our medical science developed rapidly after we survived several pandemic events. Our bodies remember and adapt. Again, not entirely accurate, but the implications were clear. Biological weapons would be ineffective against humans. He felt Minji's scanner shift focus. And your psychological responses are equally adaptive, he continued calmly as Yuna applied more oil to his shoulders. Human stress actually enhances performance in crisis situations. Through the neural connection, he projected confidence and resilience, the qualities that had helped humanity survive its own turbulent history. Fascinating, Nera interjected. The neural patterns confirm this dual response to threat, both physiological and psychological adaptation. Minji's scanner moved to Tahoe's brain patterns. Yet humans also show strong emotional reactions. These could create vulnerabilities in diplomatic situations. Tahoe smiled. Emotion drives our creativity and problem solving. Without it, we couldn't adapt so quickly to new situations. He felt Minji probing for anger triggers, fear responses, anything that could be exploited in negotiations. Instead of hiding these, Tahoe allowed her to see the truth. Humans experienced strong emotions, but could also channel them productively. As the ritual continued, Tahoe realized he needed to understand Minji's faction better. Through the neural connection, he began his own subtle investigation. I sense some Merexians might have concerns about alliance with humans, he said carefully. That's natural when cultures first meet. We had similar debates among our own leadership. What resolved these debates for humans? Nera asked. Understanding that diversity strengthens all parties, Tahoe replied, directing this thought especially toward Minji. Different perspectives help identify blind spots. Through their connection, he felt Minji's reaction, a complex mixture of skepticism and reluctant interest. Her faction feared human unpredictability, seeing it as a threat to Merexian harmony. Some believe preservation of our ways requires careful isolation, Minji said finally, her scanner still moving over Tahoe's body. Rapid integration has dissolved other cultures we've encountered. Now they were getting somewhere. Tahoe nodded thoughtfully. A valid concern. Earth history shows similar patterns when cultures with different technological levels interact. Through the neural link, he shared images of human colonization and its negative impacts on indigenous populations. Minji's surprise was evident. She hadn't expected this admission. You acknowledge the risk you present? She asked. I acknowledge the risk any first contact presents, Tahoe corrected, which is why protective cultural measures should be part of any alliance agreement. As he said this, he sensed something important through the neural connection. Minji's faction wasn't opposed to alliance with humans specifically. They feared any rapid cultural exchange. Earth was simply the latest potential threat to Merexian traditions. Cultural preservation clauses could be explicitly included in agreements. Nera suggested, glancing at Minji. Exchange rates could be moderated to prevent overwhelming their society. For the first time, Taiho felt Minji's rigid posture soften slightly. Such provisions would need to be binding. Of course, Taiho agreed. Both cultures benefit from maintaining their unique strengths. The scanning device finally lowered. Through the neural connection, Taiho sensed that Minji had found humans more complex and perhaps more reasonable than her faction had anticipated. As the ritual moved to its final phase, Taiho realized he had accomplished something significant. Not only had he detected a faction opposing the alliance, but he had begun to understand their concerns and even suggest possible compromises. More importantly, he had demonstrated that humans could be both open and strategic, willing to share but also aware when they were being assessed. When he finally emerged from the pool, Taiho felt Nera's approval through their fading neural connection. "You navigate complex currents with unusual skill, Lieutenant Commander," she said quietly as she handed him a drying cloth. "As do you," he replied with a knowing glance. He suspected she had been well aware of Minji's agenda from the beginning. "Tomorrow's council meeting will be interesting," Nera continued. "Many voices will speak on the proposed alliance." "I look forward to hearing all perspectives," Taiho said, looking directly at Minji. "Especially those concerned with cultural preservation." Minji met his gaze, her expression unreadable, but her neural impression clearer. Reluctant respect. What had begun as a hidden assessment had transformed into the beginning of genuine understanding. Taiho had turned a potential threat into valuable intelligence, not just about Merexian factions, but about the core concerns that would need to be addressed for any successful alliance. As he prepared to rejoin the human delegation, Taiho couldn't help but smile at the irony. This welcome ritual had indeed cleansed away something important. The illusion that this diplomatic mission would be simple or straightforward. The ritual entered its final phase. Taiho sat on a heated stone bench as the three Merexians applied the last of the ceremonial oils. The neural connection was at its strongest now, creating a bridge between his mind and theirs that transcended ordinary language. Before we conclude, traditionally there is time for questions and clarifications, Nera explained, her iridescent hands gently applying oil to his temples. "Is there anything you wish to understand better about our people?" Taiho recognized the opportunity. This intimate setting, away from recording devices and formal protocols, was perfect for the kind of honest exchange that couldn't happen in official meetings. "Yes," he said carefully. "I sense there are concerns about humans that haven't been openly discussed. I'd prefer to address them now, rather than have them undermine our alliance later." Nara and Yuna exchanged glances. Even Minji looked surprised at his directness. "That is unusually forthright," Nara admitted. "Most species prefer to maintain diplomatic facades." "Humans value efficiency," Taiho replied with a small smile. "And I can already feel your concerns through our connection. Your people worry about our unpredictability, don't they?" The neural link hummed with confirmation. Images flowed into Taiho's mind, Merexian analysts reviewing human history, noting the rapid shifts in politics, technology, and culture that characterize Earth's development. "Your species makes dramatic changes in direction without apparent consensus," Yuna said. "This pattern suggests potential instability in long-term agreements." "And your warriors," Minji added, her voice cool but not hostile. "They show concerning adaptability in conflict situations. The strategic implications are troubling." Taiho nodded, accepting their observations without defensiveness. Through the neural link, he projected understanding rather than justification. "These qualities developed because Earth wasn't unified until recently," he explained. "Different human groups competed, forcing rapid adaptation and innovation. But what you see as unpredictability, we see as creativity and problem-solving." He felt their minds processing this perspective. particularly Nara's genuine curiosity. "Show us," she requested. Tai-Ho focused his thoughts, sharing memories of human achievements through the neural connection, artistic breakthroughs, scientific discoveries, social movements that transformed entire societies peacefully. He showed how the same adaptability that made humans formidable in conflict also drove their greatest accomplishments. "Remarkable," Yuna whispered, her large eyes widening as she absorbed the images. "The pattern is consistent. You embrace change rather than fearing it." "Not all change," Tai-Ho clarified. "But we've learned that stagnation is often more dangerous than controlled evolution." Through the neural link, he sensed Minji's continued skepticism. Her mind projected images of other alliances the Merexians had formed, species that had initially seemed compatible but later brought disruption to Merexian society. "The Zolteri claimed similar creative benefits," she said. "Their influence led to significant social fragmentation among our outer colonies." This was valuable information, something that would never have been shared in formal negotiations. Tai-Ho understood now. The Merexians had been burned before. "That explains your caution," he acknowledged. "May I ask how the Zolteri alliance unfolded?" The three Merexians shared glances again, but Nara nodded approval. Through their connection, Tai-Ho received a compressed history, how the Zolteri had initially presented themselves as peaceful traders, but gradually introduced divisive philosophies and extractive economic practices. Several Merexian colonies had adopted Zolteri values, eventually breaking away from the collective harmony that defined Merexian civilization. "I understand," Tai-Ho said when the memory transfer finished. "You fear humans could have a similar effect." "The pattern similarities are concerning," Minji confirmed. Tai-Ho considered this carefully. The neural connection allowed him to understand their fears at a deeper level than words alone could convey. The Merexians treasured their social harmony above all, even above technological advancement or territorial expansion. "What if we structured our alliance differently?" he suggested. "Instead of open cultural exchange, we could establish specialized contact zones where interaction is carefully monitored. Cultural transmission would require explicit approval from both sides." He felt their surprise at this proposal. Most species fought for maximum access and influence. "You would accept such limitations?" Nora asked. "Humans have learned from our own first contact mistakes," Tai-Ho explained. "Unrestricted cultural exchange often harms both societies. Controlled interaction allows both cultures to adapt gradually." Through the neural link, he shared Earth's historical examples of colonial damage, how indigenous cultures had been overwhelmed by sudden exposure to different technologies and social systems. "We don't want to repeat those mistakes," he said simply. The shift in the room was palpable. Even Minji's mental barriers softened slightly. "Your perspective is unexpected," she admitted. "But how can we trust that all humans share this view? Your species lacks unified consciousness." It was a fair question. Tai-Ho thought carefully before answering. "You're right that we don't all think alike," he acknowledged. "But that's precisely why the controlled exchange model would work. It allows for oversight from both sides, preventing any single human faction from dominating the relationship." As he spoke, Tai-Ho felt something change in the neural connection. Nara and Yuna were actively advocating for his proposal in their own mental communication with Minji, a subtle negotiation happening beneath the surface conversation. Tai-Ho decided to take a risk. Through the neural link, he directed a thought specifically to Nara and Yuna. "There are those in both our societies who fear change. We must find a path that addresses their concerns while still moving forward. Their mental responses indicated agreement. More surprisingly, he felt Minji register the exchange, and her realization that she was being outmaneuvered within her own ritual team. Perhaps such an approach could address certain factional concerns, Minji said carefully. Tai-Ho seized the opening. "I believe there's something else we should discuss openly. Through our connection, I sense another group is working against this alliance, beyond those with reasonable concerns about cultural preservation. The atmosphere in the room tensed immediately. Minji's posture stiffened, but Taeho noticed it wasn't defensive. It was alert. "What do you perceive?" Nara asked, her voice lowered. "Fragments only," Taeho admitted, "but enough to recognize deliberate interference. Someone has accessed your assessment data on humans and modified key conclusions. They're presenting us as more aggressive than your actual findings indicate." This was a calculated guess based on subtle cues he'd picked up through the neural connection. Contradictions between the Marexians' direct impressions of him and what they'd been told to expect. The effect was immediate. All three Marexians went still, their mental shields strengthening instinctively. Then Nara's mind cautiously reached toward his. Asterisk, "How did you detect this?" Asterisk, her thoughts asked directly. Asterisk, "Military training. Pattern recognition. The discrepancies in your expectations versus your direct observations were too consistent to be random." Asterisk. Yuna joined the silent conversation. Asterisk, "The security implications are severe. If someone has manipulated official assessment data." Asterisk. Asterisk, "It suggests a coordinated effort to prevent alliance." Asterisk, Taeho completed her thought. "This is a serious accusation," Minji said aloud, but her mental impression carried no hostility, only focused calculation. What would humans gain by exposing such interference? It was a test question. Taeho answered honestly. Stability. An alliance built on manipulated data would eventually fail. That serves neither of our interests. Through the neural connection, he sensed Minji making a decision. Her mental barriers shifted, revealing new information. She wasn't merely representing a cautious faction. She was a security operative investigating the same data discrepancies Taeho had detected. "Your perception is correct, Lieutenant Commander," she said formally. "I am not only a representative of the Preservation Coalition. I am also tasked with internal security assessment." Nara and Yuna showed no surprise. They had known. "We believe someone is attempting to sabotage the alliance," Nara explained, "but we lacked confirmation until your neural patterns provided external verification." Taeho understood the elegant trap they had set. The ritual hadn't just been about cultural exchange. It had been a sophisticated counterintelligence operation. His reactions to their questions had confirmed their suspicions about data manipulation. "We needed an outsider perspective uncorrupted by our internal politics," Yuna added. "Your military background made you ideal." "Now we face a problem," Minji said, her tone businesslike. "The faction working against us will present their manipulated data at tomorrow's council meeting. Without proof of interference, their assessment will carry significant weight." Taeho considered the situation. What if we could demonstrate the discrepancy directly? Compare their data with the real-time neural readings you've collected during this ritual. That would require you to submit to public neural scanning during the council meeting, Nora warned. "Many species find that deeply uncomfortable." "Would it work?" Taeho asked simply. The three Marexians exchanged glances, having a rapid silent conversation through their own mental connection. "Yes," Minji finally answered. "A direct comparison would expose the manipulation, but it places you in a vulnerable position. Your actual thoughts would be accessible to the entire council." Taeho smiled. "Then that's exactly what we'll do. Nothing demonstrates trustworthiness like complete transparency." Through the neural connection, he felt their respect, and something more from Nara and Yuna, a growing alliance that transcended formal diplomatic roles. "There is another advantage to this approach," Nara said, her large eyes showing something like admiration. "It demonstrates human adaptability as a positive trait. You're using the very quality they fear to overcome their opposition." "Poetic justice," Taeho agreed with a slight smile. As they finalized their strategy, the neural connection began to fade naturally as the ritual came to its conclusion. Even as the direct link diminished, Taeho felt that something permanent had been established, a foundation of understanding with Nara and Yuna, and reluctant respect from Minji. When he finally stood to dress, Taiho realized the welcome ritual had accomplished far more than cultural exchange. In this intimate setting, away from the formal constraints of diplomatic protocol, he had formed the personal connections that would determine the real success or failure of the alliance. Tomorrow's council meeting will be memorable, Minji observed as she collected her scanning equipment. That's one word for it, Taiho replied with a knowing look. Nara approached him one last time, her iridescent hand briefly touching his shoulder. You have demonstrated that humans can be both unpredictable and trustworthy, a combination we did not believe possible. Perhaps there is more for our peoples to learn from each other than anyone suspected. As Taiho prepared to rejoin the human delegation, he couldn't help but smile at the thought of explaining to his superior officers how a bathing ritual had transformed into a counterintelligence operation and diplomatic breakthrough. Some things, he decided, were better experienced than explained. The Grand Council chamber of the Merexian space station gleamed with polished surfaces that shifted colors subtly as Taiho entered with the human delegation. Captain Lee glanced at him with curiosity. You look different, she whispered as they took their positions at the curved negotiation table. The ritual went well. Better than expected, Taiho replied quietly. Follow my lead if things get unusual.